In our last episode, we learned that HTML is just plain text with some special tags around it to help define the structure of a web page and some styling. In this episode, we're going to get a taste of JavaScript, which helps us to define some data and logic on our page so that eventually we can get up to building that interactive to-do list experience. I have one more app for you to install for today's lesson. So go to your Googler and search for run.js. That should take you to run.js.dev. This is a really cool desktop app that allows you to type some code in one side and instantly see the results on the other. It's available for both Mac and Windows, so go ahead and download that for your computer and install it. Once you have run.js installed, go ahead and open it and you should see this welcome screen. And we're going to start typing and write some JavaScript. So kind of like the last episode where we made this list of items here, let's go ahead and do a similar thing in JavaScript. So I'm going to type out those same items: download VS Code, install VS Code, and begin coding. Now, drats, we already have our first bug. That's because JavaScript is quite a bit different than HTML. In HTML, by default, what you type is content on the page. It's plain text. Whereas in JavaScript, by default, what you're typing is code and keywords and conditions and all sorts of things. So in order to actually say that this item and this item and this item is text, is content, we need to put quotes around it. Now in JavaScript, single quotes, double quotes, doesn't matter. They're both the same. I'm going to use single quotes throughout this series. I just kind of like single quotes. So go ahead and add in one quote on either side of each line of this text, and you can see that we have the same thing on the right. What you've just created is called a string. A string, you can think of it like a string of characters. It's a string of text. That defines text in JavaScript. Admittedly, this is a little boring, so let's spice it up and see some of the things that JavaScript has to offer. Let's go down to just one line of text, and I'm going to replace the content of our string with my name, Kevin. Now, how about we do something to count the letters in your name? First, we need to put this string inside of what's called a variable. A variable is a reference to data within our program that allows us to then do things with that data. So at the beginning of this line, let's type const name equals Kevin. And you'll notice that your output went away. We'll go over that too. So what we've done here is we've defined a variable. Const is a keyword that signifies that we're making a variable. Name is the name of the variable. We can call this whatever we want. And then the equal sign says set whatever's to the right of this equal sign equal to this variable. Then at the very end of this, it's good practice to put a semicolon. A semicolon is kind of like the period of JavaScript. Just like English, just like at the end of your sentences you put a period, at the end of a line of code in JavaScript, you put a semicolon. Now let's go down a few lines and just type in name. And we can see that the output of name is in fact that string of text that we set to the variable up above. But we can do different things with that. So type in name.length, and now we have 5. .length is a property on our string name, which says what is the length of the string, and this happens to be 5 characters. Now let's play around with this a bit more. maybe we wanted to put two strings together. That's called concatenation, which is a long word for putting things together. So let's say, hi, Kevin. In JavaScript, we can concatenate two strings together with a plus sign. So hi is a string because it's just text in quotes here. And then I can do plus, and I could type another string in quotes, or I could use a variable that's set to a string. So I'll do hi plus name. And you can see that computers will only do exactly what you tell them to. And in this case, it didn't know to put a space in there. So I'm gonna put a space after this letter I and do plus name. Now I have hi, Kevin. Okay, let's go a step further. Let's say we wanted to say, hi, Kevin, you have X number of letters in your name. We can keep concatenating this string together. So I'm going to do, hi, Kevin, I'm gonna put an exclamation point at the end just for good measure. You have some number of letters in your name. Now, can you, on your own, figure out how to fill in this blank with the number of letters? I'll give you just a moment to pause if you want. Did you pause? Oh well. Either way, what you'll do is we need to, again, split this string up so that we can concatenate more things together. So right here, I can use this same sort of code I did above to find the number of letters and concatenate that inside of this string. So now we have string plus string plus string plus, this happens to be a number, and then plus another string. So we have, hi Kevin, you have 5 letters in your name. And this will work for anything we set this variable to. So let's say I set this variable to something different. Maybe I set it to Jill. Hi Jill, you have 4 letters in your name. Or, hi Dustin, you have 6 letters in your name. Whatever you type here, this will work for that name. So far we've learned about strings, which are plain text between quotes. We've learned about variables, which reference types of data. We've learned about the property length on a string, which tells us how many characters. And we've learned about concatenating a bunch of strings together. Now let's say we wanted to build something that generated a greeting, hi Kevin, for various types of other people, various other strings. Anytime we want to do something repetitive in JavaScript, you often turn to what's called a function. A function takes a set of inputs and then outputs something based upon those inputs. And you can run a function over and over and over for all sorts of different inputs. So let's build this up step by step here. Like I said, a function has a set of inputs. I'm going to put those inside parentheses here. Let's say we wanted to build up a greeting. We'll keep it simple and say, hi Kevin, or hi whatever name. So inside the parentheses, we define our inputs, and we give each input, or it's called an argument, a name or variable name. In this case, it's our person name, but this could be our first name, perhaps. Then we have an equal sign and a greater than sign. And after that, we type our output. So we want to output hi, and then concatenate to that our first name. So what we've done here is we've created a function, but we need some way to reference this function so that we can run it. Well, just like up above where we created this name variable to reference this string Kevin, we're going to do the same thing down below. So we'll type const to make a variable. Then we'll type in, I'm going to type in greeting. This can really be whatever you want to call it, and set it equal to this function. And for good measure, we're going to use that semicolon. Now we have greeting as a function. Again, no output yet because we've really just defined the instructions of this function. We haven't run it with anything. So to run a function, that's called calling a function. You first reference the function, then put a set of parentheses, and then pass to that whatever you want the inputs or arguments to be. So I'm going to pass to that Kevin, and it says, "Hi, Kevin." Then I'm going to pass to it Jill, and it's going to say, "Hi, Jill." Then I'm going to pass to it Eric, and it's going to say, "Hi, Eric." So you can see in this one line of code up here, we've defined a function that takes one input and then outputs the concatenation of the string hi plus a first name. And we can run that over and over and over. Now here we have hard-coded what strings we want to pass in, but we could actually pass in variables that reference a string. So I'm going to actually pass in my name from up above, and you can see we have the same output, Kevin, here. So if this name ever changed, let me type in David here, then now we can see that this says "Hi, David" because name is set to something different. Now let's think about the possibility of combining what we've learned about HTML with JavaScript. HTML we learned is mostly just plain text. And in JavaScript, we learned that we can manipulate text or strings together with concatenation and with functions. So let's build up a function that creates an HTML list item. I'm going to put my windows side by side here so we can see a bit of this together. So this was our code from episode 1 where we created some list items. And if you remember, we've got the HTML li tag at the front end and the back end of each list item. So if we want to create a function that generates a list item, we might do it very similarly to what we did for the greeting function. So let's make another function. Again, I'm going to put that in a variable, and I'm going to call this li to match our tag here in HTML. And I want to pass to li an input of some sort of text content here. So I'm going to call my input text. And then what I want the output to be is I want to take that text and I want to wrap it between the li tags. So I'm going to type in this li tag. Now you'll notice I've put that in quotes because this is still a string. Li is not JavaScript code. Li is HTML code. So in JavaScript, we're just going to treat that as a string. Then I'm going to do a plus, and I'm going to concatenate the text content in. Then I'll do another plus, and I will close out that tag just like we did here in HTML. So now I have a function that takes an input of text and wraps it in the HTML li tags. So what happens if we want to build up this same list using our function? Well, I could call that li function just like I did greeting, reference the name of the function, open parentheses, and then provide some text. So I could type in the same text that I have over there in HTML, li download VS Code, li install VS Code, and li begin coding. And we can see that what those functions are outputting are those three strings that has built up HTML for us. Now, right now, these are all separate strings. I can see quotes at the beginning and end of each of them. But if I'm building up a web page, then it's actually one big text document. It's one big string with, even though it has new lines, that's still one big string. So if I wanted to put all of these LIs in the same string, then I can use the same technique we've used all the way up this page, and that is use plus signs to concatenate them together. So li, calling that function li, passing this input, this whole line that we're calling this function outputs this string. So for all intents and purposes, this is a string, or its output can be treated as a string. So I can just, as before, use my plus signs and bring this second line of code up above. I used Command J for that on Mac, by the way. And I can do a plus sign here, and I'm just gonna bring this up above too. And I can see that I'm calling these functions 3 times, concatenating them all together. And now I have this entire line of HTML. So this HTML is all on one line. Over here we can see in our HTML file it's on separate lines. I'm going to take the contents of this string, so highlight everything but the quotes, hit copy, that's Command C on Mac, Control C on Windows. I'm gonna paste it, Command V on Mac, Control V on Windows. I'm gonna hit save, and if I go to my web browser and refresh, it still looks the same. It doesn't matter that this code is on 1 line or on 3 lines. The LI tags give it that structure of the 3 lines of bullets. So even though we did some copying and pasting between files here, what you just did was you wrote some JavaScript to take some data, such as a name or some text. You've wrapped it in HTML tags, you've generated HTML, and through a little copy and pasting so far, we'll get more advanced, we have displayed that in a browser. So you have already gone between 2 different programming languages, and you've used one language, JavaScript, to generate code for another, HTML, and displayed that in a browser. Good job. To be honest, this is a little bit of an oversimplification, but it really highlights the heart of what web development actually is. We use JavaScript, which has all sorts of logic and functions and ways for us to manipulate things around to generate interface structure, which in our case is HTML, which is what browsers understand to display web pages. That's what web development is. We're using the tools that JavaScript, that HTML, that eventually CSS give us to add logic to our apps, to add structure and content to our apps, and to add styling to our apps. Now that we have these 3 tasks, what if we wanted to do the same thing we did in this HTML file, which was count the tasks, display how many there are, and do that dynamically for however many tasks that we have? Well, in the next video, we will learn about lists and arrays in JavaScript. See you there.